for joining us. And let's dive in straight away with the latest developments in what we've been calling Stupid Watergate 2. The sequel that could only get worse if it added Jar Jar Binks. And he is, incidentally, scheduled to testify before Congress on Thursday. Now, this was a dramatic week in the House impeachment inquiry, featuring damning public testimony from 3 State Department veterans and a closed-door interview with yet another official, David Holmes, about, among other things, a phone call that he overheard between Trump and EU Ambassador Gordon Sondland. Holmes's opening statement actually leaked to the press, and reporters went through it on air live, learning eye-catching details in real time.
Sorry, Wolf, trying to go through the entire details of this right now. Ambassador Sondland, President Trump clarified that Ambassador Sondland was in Ukraine. Ambassador Sondland replied, yes, he was in Ukraine, and went on to state that President Zelensky loves your ass.
It's true. It's true. He apparently said that, although I am actually going to quibble with your choice of emphasis there. I think he meant loves your ass, not, as you put it, loves your ass. Although, I would actually understand if it was the latter. This guy is a smoke show with dumps like a truck and thighs like what? I'm not saying he's a good president, I'm saying he's thick. Holmes also testified that Sondland had said Trump doesn't give a shit about Ukraine and only cares about big stuff that benefits him, like the Biden investigation. And it is difficult to defend all that, which is not to say that Republicans have not been trying hard. And it might actually be worth breaking down tonight each of their defences, because you're going to be hearing a lot of them in the next few months. The first technique is to insist that there is nothing to see here because nothing happened.
Attempted bribery isn't in the Constitution. Remember, Ukraine got its military aid. It was 14 days delayed. Big deal. And remember, Ukraine never made any public statement about any investigation.
So wait, hold on. She's saying because the deal didn't go through, it didn't matter. But a crime doesn't stop being a crime if it doesn't work. If you're trying to blow up an airliner and your vest doesn't go off, you don't get to go, well, no harm, no foul, and then sit there watching Detective Pikachu for the rest of the flight. Also, Ukraine only got its aid after the House started asking questions, and the Ukrainian president was days away from publicly announcing investigations, but cancelled his announcement at the last minute after this story started breaking. So the nothing to see here defence is pretty shaky. Now, Republicans' next tactic is to claim that the only evidence against Trump is hearsay. It's a point that Jim Jordan tried to drive home by reading a section of Sondland's testimony out loud.
Ambassador Taylor recalls that Mr. Morrison told Ambassador Taylor that I told Mr. Morrison that I conveyed this message to Mr. Yarmouk on September 1st, 2019 in connection with Vice President Pence's visit to Warsaw and a meeting with President Zelensky. We got 6 people having 4 conversations in one sentence, and you just told me this is where you got your clear understanding.
Well, yeah, of course that sounded convoluted. Everything is hardest to understand when you rush through it like you're listing side effects at the end of a Lunesta commercial. It's the same way that I tend to say a lot of words fairly quickly on this show, and jokes can occasionally slip by you, like they're Greta Thunberg and you're guarding Jeffrey Epstein's prison cell. But that doesn't mean the joke didn't make sense. It just means I need to slow down for a moment so everyone can realise that she didn't even care who was on the flight log. She just hated that he flew so often. The point with the whole hearsay argument, though, is that multiple people have gone on record saying the president was pressuring Zelensky for his own political gain, including his own chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, who did so on camera. So yes, the fact that there was a quid pro quo is all hearsay, in that you hear people say it all the fucking time. That is why they've come up with a fallback defence. Yes, there was a quid pro quo, but you know what? Those are actually totally fine. Here is a Republican county chair giving that defence a spin.
Presidents make deals. They kind of twist arms, you know, not violently, but they're kind of like, you know, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine.
You don't think he's opened himself up for today, like he put himself in a little bit of hot water, creating the reasons for this hearing?
No, I really don't. I don't know, that's Trump. It's like, do we want Trump not to be Trump?
Yes, so badly. I want Trump not to be Trump more than I want anything else in the world right now. I would take any kind of Freaky Friday situation. I would honestly be happy if he switched bodies with a raccoon. And honestly, Trump probably would too. He wouldn't have to deal with the impeachment inquiry, and he'd get to keep his all-trash diet. It's a win-win. But second, there is an extremely obvious problem with that argument, because of course presidents make deals. Yes, But they are supposed to conduct American foreign policy in a way that benefits the country, not themselves. It's why Teddy Roosevelt's foreign policy mantra was speak softly and carry a big stick, and not speak softly and try to get as many sticks as possible for your personal stick collection. Now, technique 3 is to pretend that the details of this scandal are just too boring to care about to make people disengage. Watch Fox Business host Stuart Varney try and sell that idea.
It was unutterably boring, wasn't it? And did you watch any of this stuff? I mean, with Richard Nixon, there was a break-in. With Bill Clinton, there was sex in the Oval Office.
Yeah.
With Trump, it's a phone call to Ukraine.
Right.
What the devil is that all about?
Right.
Oh, I'm so sorry this gigantic abuse of power isn't sexy enough for you, Stuart. Although, I will say, if robbery and sex are what you want, the Russia scandal had hacked emails and Trump did pay $130,000 to a porn star. Do either of those scandals turn you crank, Stu? By all means, pick the Trump scandal you prefer. The beauty is there's one for everyone. And the final tactic here is to claim that this story is just too complicated for people to understand.
Well, there's no quid or pro. You can't keep saying quid pro quo, even though I don't even know what that means, really. I don't know what language quid pro
It's
quo
Latin,
is. And
okay.
Is it Latin?
Yes. Yes, it is Latin. And the only thing there more shocking than the stupidity is watching someone be accurately corrected by Steve Doocy, a man whose business card reads, and this is true, an idiot. But the truth is, this story isn't actually that complicated at all. The president, by all available evidence, seems to have withheld foreign aid that had been approved by Congress to get something that would benefit him personally. That is a bribe. That is a shakedown. And White House officials clearly knew his pressure tactics were wrong because they immediately hid information about it in a top-secret server. And that isn't boring, it's not hearsay, it's certainly not standard practice for presidents, and it's really important that Trump be held to account here. Because if he gets away with this, we are sending a message that he can essentially get away with anything. And if that is the case, to paraphrase an unqualified diplomat, you better love Trump's ass, because it might not be leaving office anytime soon. And now, this.
And now, a look back at Al Roker delivering the Thanksgiving kiss of death.
Americans lining the streets and poking out of windows, all cheering on the marchers, including nearly 6,000 Macy's employees. A lot of them I know have to be fans of NBC's new hot comedy series, Marry Me.
Temperature, though, always hot on NBC's hot new medical drama, Mercy.
I'm surrounded by 5 happy actors, and they should be. They're the stars of the new NBC hit comedy, Happy Family. New NBC mid-season comedy called Committed. Got a new show out, Kath and Kim. We all remember the original Knight Riders. Must-see TV series, Constantine. Telenovela, Clash of the Choir. Right here on NBC. Matt, Savannah, back to you.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Moving on. This is actually our final show of the year. So for our main story tonight, we thought we'd take a look at something that will already be underway once we get back, and that is the census. The only reason to open the door for a stranger unless he tells you he has candy in his van. In that case, you've got to see what he's offering, right? What if he has fudge? The census is a long-standing American tradition, and every decade the government rolls out eye-catching TV ads to encourage participation, like this one from 1980.
In 80 million mailboxes across the USA, the census is a-comin' to help us plan the way, to show us where we're going so that we can understand what's needed for the future of our land. Can we count on you?
You can count on me.
Can we count on you?
You can count on me.
Okay, first, I'll say this, that is a beautiful song. I mean, it's no Eat Shit Bob, but frankly, what is? And second, and more importantly, can we actually count on you, Mickey? It's 1980, you're in a tuxedo in the middle of the day, and your pupils are the size of personal pan pizzas. We all know what that means, Mick. You've been baking with booger sugar, hawking the raw dilla, riding the White Rail Express to Blomaha. What I'm trying to say here is, Mickey Mouse has a really serious cocaine problem. Listen, I'm just stating a fact. A Disney fact. The concept of the census is very simple. At the start of each decade, the government does a comprehensive count of every single person residing in the United States. Not just citizens, not just voters, every single person. Because only by knowing how many people live where can communities effectively plan to provide things like roads, schools, and emergency services. And it's usually conducted through mail-in forms, sometimes supplemented by in-person interviews, as this training film for the 1940 census shows.
Now, what are the names of the other persons living here with you, Mrs. McGee?
Well, there's me and my husband, William H., and our two sons, John J. and William H. Jr.
We have to count babies also. Are there any babies here?
No, not anymore.
What? What did you say? What kind of weird fucking answer is that? I'm calling it right now. That woman ate her baby. That is a fact. That is a Disney fact. And however hard counting every single person seems, it's actually much harder. Because some groups can be particularly tricky to count, including children, those living in remote areas, homeless people, and of course, the Olsen twin. Now, I've been clear on this. They will tell you that there are two of them, but one of them is lying. So to accomplish all of this, the government opens 250 regional offices, hires around 500,000 temporary workers, and mails notifications to over 140 million households. Conducting the census is the largest and most complicated peacetime operation that the government undertakes. And the 2020 census is likely to be even more challenging than usual for reasons ranging from budget shortfalls to active Republican meddling. So tonight, let's talk about it. And let's start with what questions are actually on the census, because a lot of people don't know what they are, and that very much includes the current president himself.
They go through houses, they go up, they ring doorbells, they talk to people. How many toilets do they have? How many desks do they have? How many beds? What's their roof made of?
What are you talking about? No one would go to your house and ask how many toilets you have. Because the answer should be the same for everyone, and that's 4. 1 for peas, 1 for poops, 1 for guests, and 1 for groups. You know, the normal amount of toilets. Now, for the record, the census asks you just a few basic questions. Your name, age, sex, race or ethnicity, how many people live in your home, and how they're related to one another, and whether you rent or own. That is essentially it, and yet some people still do not want to engage with the census, partly because nobody really likes filling out surveys, and partly because when the government asks questions, people can get paranoid. There is a whole subgenre of YouTube videos from the last census where libertarians filmed themselves taunting census workers, like this one, filmed by a man who insisted the census was unconstitutional and then added this to the mix.
And what is your first name?
I can't answer that for you.
Oh,
sorry.
you don't want to give names?
No.
Okay, you just want to...
That's way too personal of information because,
Okay.
like I said, it's nothing against you, but you're a stranger. I can show you news stories of census workers that have come back and raped and killed people.
Yeah, I didn't even know that.
Okay, hold on there, because two key things there. One, that census worker seems like a very nice lady who has never killed anyone. And two, you are being so obnoxious, I would honestly understand if she was suddenly tempted to break that streak. And so everyone knows the census is very much constitutional. In fact, it's not just in the Constitution, it's the 6th fucking sentence. Think about how significant that is. Freedom of speech didn't even make it in there at all. They had to tack that on later in the 18th century equivalent of a post-it note. And it is critically important that people participate in the census. For a start, census data is used to evenly distribute political power across the states. Seats in the House of Representatives are divided up based on population. And after every census, adjustments are made. For example, after the last one, Texas gained 4 seats and Ohio lost 2. And some states are anxious about being undercounted, as this story from Minnesota shows.
The 8th congressional seat that we have. We've held on to it for some time. We barely held on to it in 2010, and in 2020 it looks like we're in the same situation again, where we're very close to losing that seat.
Right, and that would be bad for them because losing a seat in Congress is much like losing one in musical chairs. Someone is going to be very disappointed, only this time it's an entire state and not just Aiden. I'm sorry, Aiden, but you've got a slow butt. Better you learn to live with it now. And census data also plays a crucial role in directing government funding. Hundreds of federal programs use census data to distribute well over $880 billion to states and localities. And if your community's population count is off, even by just a tiny percentage, it can have real consequences. Take the city of Circle Pines, Minnesota. In the last census, they were just 82 people shy of the 5,000-person threshold required to qualify for certain state roads funds. And local officials were very frustrated because they believed that they'd had an undercount. So they do not want that to happen again. And luckily, they have found the hero that Circle Pines deserves.
I became census man when I was elected to lead the census initiative in our city, which is a vitally important initiative.
Listen, I absolutely love the fact that there is a census-themed superhero. Although I will say this, his only superpower seems to be reminding people the census exists. It's like if Batman didn't fight crime, he just wandered around and told people interesting facts about bats. Bats can eat up to 1,200 mosquitoes an hour. Goodbye, enjoy your mugging, citizen. And we haven't even gotten into the fact that businesses also use census data to decide where to add jobs or open stores. So it is absolutely vital to get the census right. That is why it's so unfortunate that the president seems to think it's a complete waste of time and money.
They're spending $15 billion or some ridiculous amount of money on a census. I don't know why we can't do that through the computers of the world, because frankly, that's the way you can do a census today, and probably a lot more accurately.
All right. So obviously there is a lot to unpack there, but let me just quickly pick up on computers of the world. I refuse to take computer advice from Donald Trump. Have you ever seen him use one? Can you even picture that happening in your mind right now? Donald Trump clicking a mouse? Typing with his fingers? No way! Here is a photo that he posted during a Reddit AMA. And he looks like he's scared that if he touches the laptop, it will burn him. Now, as for that whole cost issue, Congress has actually underfunded the Bureau by hundreds of millions of dollars for years, during which time critical preparations for this census needed to be made. And that is not good, because next year, for the first time ever, the Bureau will be asking most people to answer the census online, which could make counting everyone easier, provided the government's website works properly. You do not want another healthcare.gov on your hands, a website whose launch was so flawed that you may well recall only 6 people were able to use it to sign up for health insurance on its first day. Fun fact, those 6 people, the cast of Friends. I mean, could they be any luckier? Now, to avoid problems, typically the Bureau does multiple full-scale test runs in different locations to make sure that everything is not only working, but that it will work in a variety of difficult-to-count areas. It had planned to do 3 test runs this time, in an urban setting, a rural setting, and on tribal lands. But thanks to budget constraints, it ended up only doing 1 in Providence County, Rhode Island, where they didn't even have a marketing budget. One library actually tried to help there by offering people coupons for $5 off late fees if they filled in a census on a tablet computer there. But the results were underwhelming.
How long has this been up about in the library?
A couple of weeks, I guess.
And how many people have come through to use it?
Unfortunately, well, here's the thing. A lot of people have looked at it. You know, so far we've had 1 that I can vouch for. 1 person's come in and done it. And, you know, and the coupon was an incentive on that.
And here's the thing, I actually have a confession here. I am that man. I had $233,000 in late fees in Providence, Rhode Island, and now I have just $232,995. And guess what? I'm still not returning the copy of Eat, Pray, Love that I borrowed in 2004. I just committed the perfect crime. Admitting it on camera probably isn't ideal, but no fucking regrets. So the 2020 census was always going to be a big challenge, but instead of being able to focus their undivided attention on all these issues, the Bureau has had to expend time and energy dealing with this shit.
Overnight, the Trump administration announced a move that could impact the balance of power for years to come. The 2020 census will ask about citizenship for the first time in decades. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross announcing the decision following a request by the Justice Department.
That's right. You may remember that last year, Wilbur Ross, who is in charge of the census and is also what you would get if you put Elmer Fudd in the oven at 425 for 90 minutes, he announced a citizenship question would be added to the census in a move that even the Bureau's chief scientist said would harm the quality of the census count, which makes sense, doesn't it? Because if you have the government, specifically this government, asking people if they are citizens, many may choose not to respond out of fear that the information could be used against them or people in their household. Despite the fact, and this is really important to know, it is against the law for the Bureau to disclose any private information that identifies an individual to anyone. Not the IRS, not ICE, not anyone. Personal census information is actually kept completely confidential for 72 years, by which point, let's face it, we will all be dead. Probably by that census worker's hand once she gets a taste for blood. Now, at the time, Wilbur Ross claimed it was actually the Justice Department who had requested that citizenship question to better enforce the Voting Rights Act, which immediately seemed like bullshit because voting rights has never seemed exactly like a top priority for this administration. And sure enough, it later emerged that it was Wilbur Ross who had actually pressured the DOJ to request the question from him. Now, the reason why involves this guy, a Republican redistricting strategist named Thomas Hofeller. Here he is delivering a very funny joke very well.
Redistricting is like an election in reverse. It's a great event. Usually the voters get to pick the politicians. In redistricting, the politicians get to pick the voters.
You nailed it, Tommy. But the thing is, what he's saying there is really bad. He's just reciting a major systemic problem with the cadence of a joke, which was also, incidentally, the original title for this programme. Now, as it happens, that man died last year, and amazingly, his death ended up exposing Wilbur Ross's true reasons for asking the citizenship question, because when Hofeller's estranged daughter began to go through his things, she found something very surprising.
His daughter finds these zip drives, and on the zip drive is this tranche of information that essentially shows that he had engineered this as a plan explicitly to suppress minority votes.
It's true. His daughter found documents on the hard drive that essentially laid out Republican strategies to suppress minorities' voting power and to use the Voting Rights Act as a cover, which is obviously appalling, but probably one of the least horrifying things you could find on a hard drive belonging to your dead father. And incidentally, on that point, if I ever die and anyone finds mysterious hard drives belonging to me, just assume they contain a shady gerrymandering scheme that I'm involved in. Don't even click. Just throw it straight out, because it's definitely a gerrymandering scheme and definitely not my collection of hamsters in tiny Speedos. I mean, if it were that, there would be nothing wrong with it because it's not technically illegal. I checked. But that doesn't matter anyway, because it's not my collection of hamsters in tiny Speedos. It's talking points about my gerrymandering scheme. I'm glad we all got that clear. I'll see you later. The point is, Hofeller had proposed the citizenship question so he could make it easier for Republicans to hold on to power. And it turns out he and the Trump administration were in close contact about the whole thing. And the scheme was so impossible to justify, 3 courts ruled against it, and finally, the administration lost in front of the Supreme Court, and the question was dropped. Meaning, the citizenship question will not be on the census next year. That is really important to understand. It will not be on the census. Here's the problem, though. Here's the problem. Those who work with immigrant communities say the damage might unfortunately already be done.
The anxiety and fear among Chicago's Latino families remains despite President Trump's decision to back off on the citizenship question on the 2020 census.
The reluctancy is there because the environment has been already created to deter them.
Exactly. They've now created an environment of fear. People will still be looking over their shoulder, terrified, as incidentally, that woman should probably be, because Susan Skellington is right behind her, waiting to pounce. Look out! It's Susan! Look, all in all, there is a lot working against this census, and experts are worried an undercount next year is inevitable. The only question is by how much, and the fear is it could be millions. So, what can we do? Well, it's actually relatively simple. All of us living in America right now need to fill out the census next year. And I know you've seen a lot of people trying to persuade you to do that tonight, from a superhero without superpowers to an aspiring serial killer to a coked-up mouse. And if you don't want to participate in the census for them or for yourself or for your community, I'll actually give you one more good reason to participate. And that is that it would probably really irritate this guy. Because, think about it, his administration already clearly thinks that certain people don't count. So what better way to get back at him than to make sure that you do and make the census count you? And you know what? Just to make him extra mad, why not include a note telling him how many toilets you have? Which, remember, should be 4, the normal amount. Disney fact. And now, this.
And now, another installment of Coming Up on Inside Edition.
Do not mess with this woman. She's 6'1" and ex-military. Plus, no more bananas and danger zone. The stairs in your own home. Plus, the Botox bandit. Then, jet ski investigation. And burger mystery. Then,
you can actually drive 50 feet with your eyes closed when you sneeze.
Then,
oh my God,
invasion of the goats. Plus, grumpy old man.
why does this keep happening?
Plus, what are you doing, mister? There's a bear in my closet and gator in the kitchen. And what the heck is that thing? And hitchhiking snake. Then, yup, he's gay.
Moving on. Look, finally tonight, before we go, we just wanted to say thank you so much for watching this show this year. We have had a lot of fun. We robocalled the FCC. We baked the world's largest marble cake to spite the leader of Turkmenistan. We climbed a fake Mount Everest to show why climbing the real one is a bad idea. And we did an elaborate musical to tell a coal tycoon to eat shit. We haven't actually heard from Bob Murray yet, but I'm sure he loved it. We also got obsessed with a Japanese mascot called Chiijohn. You may remember that Chiijohn was the hyper-violent unofficial otter for the Japanese city of Susaki, and also the star of videos like this one. Excellent. That's excellent. Now, after Susaki broke ties with Chiijohn, their official mascot, Chiijohn, was left alone. And look, yes, exactly, that broke our hearts. So we did something uncharacteristically sweet for us, and we created our own replacement mascot, Chiijohn, a nearsighted otter. We actually sent him to Japan to find Chiijohn. I will admit he came on a little strong at first, but eventually they became great friends and have been living in Susaki together ever since. The whole saga was heartwarming, wholesome, and basically the exact opposite of what it feels like being alive right now. And I've actually been thinking a lot about these two lately, because next year, let's face it, it is going to be unpleasant. It is a presidential election year, so things are going to get even more toxic than they already are. And lately, I've found myself often craving for these two's a particular brand of unmitigated joy. So I recently tried to get in touch with them, and well, here's what happened.
It had been a rough year, and Chiijohn was very sad. He missed his friends, who lived very far away, so he decided to write them a letter. He wound up and threw it as far as he could. Perfect. On a distant shore, Chiijohn and Chiijohn sat by the river. The tide was about to change.
Dear friends,
the letter said,
I wanted to call you, but I have AT&T, so this seemed like a more reliable option.
It's been an exhausting year, and next year is looking worse. I wish we could see each other. Chiijohn.
Reading the letter broke their otter hearts. It was so sad. Chiijohn had AT&T. Suddenly, Chiijohn had an idea. Chiijohn and Chiijohn packed everything they'd need for a long journey and borrowed a snack, or two. On the way to the airport, they said goodbye to all the local fish. "We're dead," replied the local fish, "but good luck." Chiijohn and Chiijohn were so excited for their 13-hour flight, although the same could not be said of everyone. Stuck between two giant otters, yet again. At last, America. Right away, they had trouble fitting in. They took what they assumed was the subway, and soon they were in the heart of New York, America's Susaki. But no one there seemed to recognize Chiijohn. "Are you sure he has a television show?" asked Chiijohn. They found a club for comedy. Maybe Chiijohn was a member. "That man looks just like him. It must be his adult son." Emboldened by his 2 drinks, Chiijohn tried comedy himself. Chiijohn killed. Local fish really do be like that. Someone heard they had been looking for TV's best late-night host and told them where to find him. They had come to the right place. But this wasn't Chiijohn. It couldn't be. This man was funny, charming, and handsome. "Very handsome," said Chiijohn. Chiijohn couldn't be here because Chiijohn was sad. And how could anyone be sad at a place like NBC? "Come on," Chiijohn said. "Chiijohn needs us." But they started to worry that they would never find him. They sat down a moment to rest, and a local artist captured their sadness. Chiijohn and Chiijohn didn't recognize themselves. Then again, whoever really does in the eyes of others? Chiijohn and Chiijohn had reached the end of the city. There was nowhere left to look. Their hope dwindled with the daylight. The tide hadn't changed the way they'd wished. But that's the funny thing about tides. They might not change when you want them to, but they never stay the same. Chiijohn had been trying to see Susaki. In the end, it was Susaki who saw him. It was a good surprise. Chiijohn hadn't realized surprises could be good anymore. For the first time in a long time, Chiijohn dared to hope. "Soon it will be a new day," Chiijohn said. "Where we're from," Chiijohn replied. "It already is."
That's our show. Thanks so much for watching this year. We really appreciate it. We'll see you next February. Good night. Hey, guys. Hey, how's it going? Hey, Chiijohn, you really like Seth, huh? You really like him. He's very good.